So today we're actually going to be talking about houseplants, one of my favorite and kind of most peculiar houseplants. That's actually the Staghorn Fern that's over here hanging up on the wall. So let's talk about it. So what's going on, guys? Justin from H2OPlants.com, and normally we deal with aquatic plants. That's normally what kind of content we upload here, but I'm also a big houseplant hobbyist and just plants in general. I love them, can't get enough. And I figured that I would showcase some of the houseplants that I have to maybe encourage people out there that are into aquatics to get into them. And if maybe you're a new houseplant hobbyist or you are an existing houseplant hobbyist, maybe you came across this video and maybe you'll get into aquariums. So I kind of want to merge the two and kind of spread the information and show you guys some really cool things. So that's why I'm doing this video. So some people in my live streams actually comment on the Staghorn Fern that's mounted over here on the wall. They love it. It's really cool looking, and I love it. It's a very unique plant. It's a type of fern, and it kind of grows naturally on trees in the wild. It'll just kind of attach itself, and it's not something that kind of kills the tree itself. It's like a symbiotic relationship almost. Although they don't really do too much for each other. The tree is just something for the fern to grab onto, much like orchids. Orchids kind of land and they kind of grow from that tree itself. So I do have another Staghorn Fern actually sitting in this can, a good way to upcycle. Now this isn't ideal because the fern likes very barky or like woody texture, and right now it's in soil. So this is just something that I have that I recently got maybe like a month or two ago, and I just haven't had a chance to really mount it up. But with that said, I want to show you the largest Staghorn Fern I've ever seen in person. So I ordered this, and I don't even think I could get the whole thing in frame. So I ordered this from a Facebook user in a houseplant group. They were just like, hey, I have some of these, does anybody want them? And I ordered one. I didn't realize how big it was. Like, this thing is big. It's probably 3 feet long. So I'm super excited for it, but I was not expecting it to be this big. I thought I was gonna be able to pot it up. I thought it was gonna be a small, like a little bit bigger than this guy, and I had a pot lined up for it. I thought I was gonna be able to pot it. Well, can't really pot this. It's just too big. The bottom part, which this is called the shield, is just way too big. I don't have a pot big enough, and nor does it really have a root system to really go in a pot right now. So it's a very bare root system. So I want to kind of attach it to something and encourage it to root into a new type of media. And what we're going to be rooting it onto is actually this board in here. Now this isn't a cedar board. Typically you would use a cedar or some sort of wood that is not like chemically treated, because obviously you're going to have the plant on here. This plant actually will absorb the wood too. Once it roots in there, much like a tree, it will kind of start feeding off of this in a way. It won't, like in nature, it doesn't kill the tree, but it will actually kind of absorb this material and use it to grow. So this isn't ideal because it is not cedar, but this is only a short-term solution. I actually plan on doing something else with this, but this thing really needs to be mounted. I got this in yesterday. It sat in the mail for 7 days pretty much because there were some delays, and it just really needs to get somewhere where it could start drinking and growing back, you know, to its healthy state, because right now it's a little flimsy. As you can see, it's not really supposed to be that flimsy. It's supposed to be more stiff. So I really want to just get it onto something temporarily, and probably in the next couple of weeks I'll change it out to something that's cedar or a different kind of mount. You could use different kinds of things like the wire mesh baskets with the kind of cocoa fiber and stuff in it. So there's lots of different options. This is just what I had available when I went out to the store that I grabbed it. And this is just a simple like 12 by, I think it's 12 by 4 feet tall by 1 inch thick. Simple plaque type thing that I got from Home Depot. I cut it down to about 12 inches by 12 inches, and that will allow this to sit perfectly. So let's just talk about the Staghorn Fern first, so you guys can kind of understand why it's so cool, at least in my eyes. So like I said, it does grow on trees. It has this round part here. This is called the shield, and this is actually the female part of the plant. This is the male part. This is the part that releases all the spores into the air to allow it to propagate naturally in the wild if it was to do that. However, this will produce offsprings from around the plant. So once it's been kind of planted for a while, you'll start seeing pups come out, and if you wanted to, you can separate them and plant them out, or you can just leave them in there and just leave them be. So the plant actually does absorb water both from its leaves and its roots. It has little fibers on the leaves, these almost like little white hairs, that allow the plant to absorb water and moisture in the air. So this is why, as an aquarium channel and an aquarium hobbyist, this is cool to have, because you could put it by your aquariums and it will kind of live off the natural humidity. I will say you do have to water it, but it likes humidity. So us being fish tank hobbyists, and those of you that have fish tanks, having this on a wall like I have that one back there near fish tanks is a good thing. And they don't need a whole lot of light. They like bright indirect light, so you could put it in like a sunny window, but not directly in the window. They will burn, so they do, like I said, they grow on trees. So think the trees are up top, they have a lot of foliage, they're getting kind of filtered light down below, but they're still getting bright light. So it's ideal that they're kept in a bright location, but not direct light. And overall, just a very easy plant. I water mine like once a week, and literally what I do is I take it off there, I dip it in the fish tank, because it actually likes dechlorinated water. Having water that's doesn't have chlorine in it is very good. You can water them without it, or with chlorinated water. I've done it before, but it's actually better for it without chlorine in it. And so yeah, so this guy, once I get it mounted, I'm gonna dunk it in the bathtub, because it's just too big to really fit in the aquarium. As you can see, it's longer than the aquarium, and that's gonna make quite a mess. So I'm gonna literally just stick it in the bathtub, run the water for a bit, let it really get a nice drink going on. And it'll be mounted to this wood. So let's get into kind of how I'm going to mount this. And this is my first time mounting it, so it's kind of going to be like a little learning experience for both of us. So the two types of things that I'm using to mount this onto this is going to be this orchid mix. So the orchid mix is a lot of wood fibers, and it's just like bark fibers pretty much. Like bark chunk. And then I'm going to use some sphagnum moss along with it. And the reason why is because the bark is going to be too loose to really get this thing to like mount onto it all too well. So I'm going to use this as kind of filler to hold in some moisture as well, and hopefully it'll work out. The problem is the shield on this plant, the big round thing, is just so massive that this is going to be a little tricky. The other one that's over here, the shield is so small and it's wrapped around moss, or moss is wrapped around it, so it's really like just an ideal situation. This one is not, and for my first time this is going to be a little difficult, so hopefully you'll bear with me and we'll figure this out. What I'm going to do first though is, so that way I'm able to mount this on something, I'm going to drill 2 holes and I'm going to put in 2 screws with some washers. You could use any size screw. Obviously you don't want to use anything too long that'll go through the board, but I'm just going to use some 3/8 or 3/4 inch number 8 screws, which are wood screws, and I'm going to use some flat washers. The reason why I'm using the flat washers is when I wrap the back with some twine or wire, that it stays on the screw, because the screws are kind of, they don't have a big head to them, so it'll allow the wire to come off easily. And because I'm going to be taking the plant up and like off the wall a lot, it could risk like breaking that. I just want to avoid that situation. So what I'm going to have to do is drill 2 holes in the board. So hopefully you can see this here. I know it's a little messy, and I'm working on a very small desk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-drill 2 holes into this, and I just want to make sure I'm using the side that I want to for the front. So this is going to be the back side. I'm just going to drill 2 holes with this, pre-drill them so that way it doesn't split the wood when I do it. So let's just we'll do one here. And you don't want to go all the way through, obviously, because then you'll see it on the other side. So I'm just going down a little bit, so that way when I do the screw, it goes in easily. Alright, so we got our 2 screws, and we got 2 little washers. So alright, screws are in. So we want to mount it in the middle here. I'm just going to draw a circle. And like I said, we're going to use some orchid bark. And we're going to use some sphagnum moss. And I'm hoping that this works. But the problem is the shield of the fern is so big, and there's such an indent that I have to kind of build a mound for me to have it root into this. So that's why I'm going to mix it with the sphagnum moss also here. Matter of fact, let me do a layer of that as well right now. Now you don't want to use only the sphagnum moss because it'll hold in too much moisture, and it likes to be able to air out. So it's ideal that you have a mixture of the bark and the sphagnum moss. If you can get away without any moss, that's going to probably be good, but then you'll definitely water more often. But moss helps to retain some moisture while the bark allows it to kind of dry out. Alright, so I'm going to see how this will sit on here. Now I'm going to mount it so it hangs down just because I think it'll look cool that way. Or should I go for it the other way? Maybe I'll go for it the other way. Let's see. Okay. So this is almost ideal right now. The shield isn't completely on the wood, and it's like compressed. So it has like a nice feel to it. So it should be good. So I'm going to take this back off for a moment, and we're going to get our mounting wire ready. So I'm just going to use regular fishing line on this, and what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of wrap it around just a bunch of times to hold it in place, and hopefully that'll work. So, okay. Now, I'm gonna, hopefully, I'm gonna lay it right like that. Okay, and then I'm going to, where's the string? Okay, here we go. And you want to try not to do this too tight because okay, this is a little harder than it looks. I told you it was my first time. I'm not going to be an expert on this. Now my fear is with the fishing line is that I'm going to break one of the leaves with this because I'm going to tie it too tight. So I'm going to try and not tie it too tight where it cuts into the leaf, but I have a feeling it's going to be near impossible. You know what? I'm going to try something. Let's see, maybe I could use this. Now this will rot after a while, this rope here, because it's organic. Obviously, it's organic material, so as it gets wet, dries, it'll rot out. But it may hold on to this better. So let's see. Yeah, this is much better. Alright, so you can see here it's staying put kind of where it is. I stuffed some moss around the edges here because some of the bark was pouring out, so as I lifted it up, so I just want to make sure that it kind of stays put, especially once I water it in. So I'm going to have to be very careful the way I water this temporarily. When I water it, I'm going to make sure I dip it and kind of just leave it be and not shake it up a bit. Just let it kind of get saturated and then pull it out gently without having too much issues with this. I do want to wrap some of the fishing line around it just as a double kind of precaution, because this rope here that I used is a fabric. I forget what kind of, it's like a twine type rope, so it will degrade over time, and I just don't want it to come undone prematurely. So at least if I have fishing line around it, that'll kind of back it up just in case. So we're going to put in a couple things of fishing line real quick. Alright, and now that the Staghorn Fern is mounted properly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap some of the fishing line around the two screws that we had put. I'm going to make sure I move the washer up. I want it to be behind the washer, so that way it won't come undone. That's all she wrote right there. I'm going to go water this guy. And here is the final resting place, right in this window. It's night out, I apologize, but that is where it is, guys. So hopefully it bounces back. I'm optimistic, we'll see. And that's basically it, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. If you're new here, consider subscribing so you don't miss any more plant video content. If you want to check out our last video on the best gifts for aquarium hobbyists, you can click to the left. And if you want to check out a planted tank videos for beginners, you can click to the right. And I will see you guys next time.